Now the Ran has a very interesting conclusion about the Daled Kosos and Heseiba, right? The Gemara suggested two opinions as to which set of Daled Kosos requires Heseiba. Is it the first set, which would be the Kos of Kiddush and the Kos of Gal Yisrael, or the second set, which would be Birkas Hamazon and Halem? And each opinion rejected the other opinion. For example, the first opinion said, how could you talk about a Heseiba, which is their Cherus, and Chayav Adam Laharos es Atzmo in the second set, my Dahava Hava. You already completed saying the Haggadah. The Sipri Tzis Mitzrayim ended with Gal Yisrael. And the second opinion reject the first opinion, but because it's too early in the night for Cherus. Cherus took place later on in the night, so we want to postpone the Heseiba till a later time period. And the Ran says that since we don't have a final conclusion of the Gemara as to which set of Daled Kosos requires Heseiba, which set does not, therefore we require Heseiba for both sets, meaning for all four Kosos. And you'll see the Ran quoted here on the bottom left of page Kuf Chaf Aleph in the Amudei Hod. Afal Gav to be Alba Kaimel and Ibcha to call Sofik Rabban Lakula. Why don't we apply the principle of Sofik Rabban Lakula, in which case we would be Mekil and we wouldn't require Heseiba neither in the first two Kosos nor in the second two Kosos, and that would be an application of the universal principle of Sofik Rabban Lakula. Hacha, but here, Keva de Lav Milsa de Trichahi, the Ran in his first answer says that it's not such a big bother to require Heseiba, and therefore Avdina L'Rav de Milsa. We're going to require Heseiba because it's not asking much. But then he says, Kach Pirshu Zal, some anonymous commentary, but Veliner, the Ran says what appeals to my mind is that Al Kochav by Lemevet Heseiba B'Kulu, we have to do Heseiba on all four. The Eid Nezel L'Kula, if we're going to be Mekil, my Mekil Kahani Tfei Mihani, why are you going to be Mekil on the first two or on the second two? Inekil B'Travayu, and if we're going to be Mekil straight across the board for all four Kosos, then Mi'akra Mitzvah Heseiba L'Gamri. Those are the key words that we want to underline in the Ran. Mi'akra Mitzvah Heseiba L'Gamri. We will be, in effect, undermining and vitiating the entire takana and the entire mitzvah of Heseiba. And now we turn to page Kuf Chaf Beis. And we formulate, based on this Ran, a brand new principle in Sofik Rabban L'Kula, and that is that if the Sofik Rabban L'Kula will, when we apply it, will end up with an Akiras Takonis Chacham L'Gamre, you will undermine the entire mitzvah, the entire enterprise. Lo Daininan, we do not apply the principle of Speker D'Rabban L'Kula, but rather we say Speker D'Rabban L'Chumra in order to maintain that takana, that kiyum mitzvah. So again, just to summarize, although technically applying the universal principle of Sofik D'Rabban L'Kula to this case of Daled Kosos would mean that I could be Mekil on all four Kosos, but then I have left the Takonis Chachamim out in the cold. I have completely undermined the Takonis Chachamim of Heseiba V'Daled Kosos. And in such a case, we do not apply the principle of Sofek D'Rabban L'Kula. Ach tzorech iyun. He says that the way that the Ran presented it, the sequence of his presentation, is very strange. He should have started with his final conclusion. I mean, that's really the most fundamental way of answering the question why we're going to require a Heseiba in all four Kosos and suspend the principle of Sofik D'Rabban L'Kula. In other words, why does the Ran bother by quoting the business about whether it's tircha, are we imposing on him too much by requiring a Heseiba? No, we're not imposing. Leave that all out. I mean, there's no possibility of applying Sofik D'Rabban L'Kula because the akra takana legamri. But the Amudei Hod goes beyond this. He, in his meticulous reading and analysis of the Ran, he says that there's something very strange about the sequence of the Ran. The lead Nira, let's go back again to the previous page on the bottom. The Al Karchach boy lemevet Heseiba bekulu, the ineza lekula amay nekel bahani tvei mihani. So it seems that the Ran already at this point has an answer to his question. Namely, that if we apply Sofigara Lakula, where are you going to be making? Are you going to be making the first two Kosos? That seems totally arbitrary. Why not be making on the last two Kosos? And if you're going to be making on the last two Kosos, once again, it seems arbitrary. At this point, the Ran has an answer. But no, he doesn't stop there. He says, that if we'll apply Safik Rabban Lakula for both sets, we'll end up without any mitzvah of Heseiba at all. V'tema, madua hafach haran Heseiba advarim. Logically, the Ran should have begun by saying that. Just 1 second. Madua hafach haran Heseiba advarim the hikdim dal korchach boy lemevet Heseiba b'kulu the e nazel lekula my nekel bahani tfei mihani. And only afterwards he says, "V'nekel b'travayu hami akrav mitzvahs Heseiba legamrei." Why is the Ran putting the following forward? Well, we can't choose which of the two sets of Kosos we should be making, something about a Lakula. He should have first said, and this is the main thrust of his answer, that the Akra mitzvahs Heseiba legamrei. And then he would say, well, okay, so maybe you want to salvage one set and require a Heseiba in one of the two sets. But then he would ask the question, well, why do you choose this set over that set? L'chora nireh mitchilas divrei Arad d'spirule to meikar din safik d'Rabbanan l'kula lo ayinu mekilim el b'shtei kosos bilvad. In other words, the Ran, even if we would apply Safik Rabbanan L'Kula, we would only be allowed to apply that with regard to 2 out of the 4 Kosos. But the Ran is saying that we can't do so, because why would you be makil on these 2 Kosos and not on those 2? It seems like an arbitrary toss-up. V'tzarech bir lama mishoresh din safik d'Rabbanan L'Kula nakat arad ve'ein lahakil ela b'shtei kosos. The Ran is assuming that even if we would apply safik d'Rabbanan L'Kula, we can only apply it for 2 out of the 4 kosos. Why is that so? Yeah, I guess the Ran is saying the following. We know for a fact that we need a Heseiba with regard to Dalet Kosos. We're not sure which of the Kosos. But if you were to apply Safik Rabbanan L'Kula in every set then you definitely undermined the mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It's not a suffix. There's an element of certainty here, because we know, and this is unquestionable, that one of the two sets of Kosos requires Heseiba. Is that not so? Again, we can debate and fight back and forth. Should it be this set, that set? But there's definitely a takana of the Chachamim that you need Heseiba during Daled Kosos. We can only argue which of the Daled Kosos, but there's definitely a chiyuv, an obligation of Heseiba during the Daled Kosos. So you'd have to choose, like, so to speak, flip a coin and choose between the first set and the second set. But you definitely need a Heseiba in one of the two sets. That's unquestionable. And that's going to lead the Ran to the conclusion that we can't choose one set over the other, because there's no logical reason why you would tip the scale here as opposed to here. The Gemara comes to no final conclusion on this machlokas, which of the two sets. The Od Tema, the Im Svile Laran Shebekoach Speke the Rabba Lekula Ein Lahakil Yosem Bebeis Kosos, meaning that we definitely need Heseiba on two Kosos. Lo yitzorch lahamshich v'lo b'vi neked b'travayim me'ikra mitzvahs Heseiba legamri darei ein shum siba lahakil b'travayim. In other words, once the Ran is established that we definitely need Heseiba on one of the two sets, and therefore we cannot choose one set over the other because that would be arbitrary, then Memela, the Ran has an answer to his question. You're going to require Heseiba in all four Kosos in both sets. So why did the Ran have to go on and add that mi'akra mitzvah Heseiba legamri? I think what he's asking is that the final here, the last words of the Ran are really superfluous. He's saying mi akra mitzvah Heseiba legamri. I mean, that was the very premise of the Ran from the get-go. He already established that you can't be oker the whole takana, and you have to therefore choose one of the two sets, and therefore you can't choose from the two because it's just flip a coin, and therefore you'll have to do Heseiba on all four. Now, why does he come back at the end of this paragraph and tell us the imkain mi'akra mitzvah Heseiba legamri? I mean, that was the very premise that he operated with from the get-go. That led him to the conclusion that one of the two sets for sure requires Heseiba. So let's just think if we can come up on our own with any sort of an answer. I wonder if you could suggest the following. And again, I never would have thought of this if not for his kasha here, his meticulous reading of the Ran. So we any credit is due to him. The Ran at one point is saying that we should apply Safek Rabbanan Lekula, but our hands are tied. We really don't know which of the two sets requires Heseiba, and as a result, we may have to befall, in actuality, we may have to do Heseiba on all four Kosos, because otherwise, we're arbitrarily choosing one set over the other. But the Ran is of the opinion now that Safek Rabbanan Lekula should apply. We can't actually implement it, because if we do, we're going to be, so to speak, insulting the other sect, whichever one it is, and that's arbitrary, and that we can't do. We don't have an option of omitting Heseiba in all four kosos, because then we're going against the Takonis Chachamim, that Dalit Kosos needs Heseiba. Whichever one it is, we don't know, but at this point, the Ran is saying Safik Rabban L'Kula. We will apply Safik Rabban L'Kula, but before our hands are tied. That's not the same as what the Ran is saying now at the end. At the end, the Ran is saying, you know what? Let's apply Safik Rabban L'Kula straight across the board. Says the Ran, no, that's beyond the purview of this principle of Safik Rabban L'Kula. You cannot say Safik Rabban L'Kula if it's going to be Oker the entire Takana. And therefore, in such a case, there's no Safik Rabban L'Kula. Not like the Ran was saying until this point that there really is Safik Rabban L'Kula. But I don't have a choice. I can't figure out how to apply Safik Rabban L'Kula, because I cannot arbitrarily choose one set over the other.
Is this the same logic that we went through with the Megillah, or no?
I mean, I'm assuming he's going to talk about Megillah. Let's see. I can try to remember what we said in the past about Megillah. You're talking about Tiberia, right? I'm not sure if you take again, you have the Sefer, I forget, you have the Sefer, right? So if you fast forward just for a split second, just to show you the title, on Kuf Lamed Aleph, which is a full 10 pages from here, Os Ches, that's where he's going to talk about Megillah. So I just want you to know that it exists. You're asking, what did we say about Megillah? Yeah, we said that Lo Ma'akre Takana Legamre, because there are other cities on the face of the earth that will read the Megillah on both Yudalit, some cities, and other cities on Tesvav. So we're only focusing on Tiberia as one city. Here, we're talking about the entire entity of Dalit Kosos. That's what I remember. I'm sure we said more than that, but I'll tell you what the nafkamina would be. According to the Ran, what happens if he drank all four kosos without a Heseiba? So in what we call part one of the Ran, the Reish of the Ran, okay, he went ahead and applied Safik Rabban L'Kula twice, which he shouldn't have done. But according to the second answer of the Ran, he had no leg to stand on. There was no Safik Rabban L'Kula in this case, because Mi'akri Takana L'Gamri. Nafkavita might be if he has to drink again a second round of Dalit Kosos. All right, let's see how he proceeds here. L'chora nira mitchilas divrei arad d'svil demi ikar din Safik Rabban L'Kula lo hayinu mekilim ela b'shtei kosos levad. So again, what I'm going to interpret it thusly, that the Ran initially says we could apply Safik Rabban L'Kula, but again, only for one set. We can't apply Safik Rabban L'Kula for both sets. But now when we get to Safik Rabban L'Kula for one set, we're going to say, Amai Nekel Bahani Tvei Mihani. We don't know how to proceed and implement Safik Rabban L'Kula. B'tzarach birch lama mishoresh din Sfeika Rabban L'Kula nokat arad di'em l'hakel el b'shtei kosos. All right, so let's go on to Gimel. V'nira loma desfir leila ran v'yesh lodun safik rabban lekula b'shtei panim. I guess he's saying that conceptually we can define safik rabban lekula in two ways. One, midin hachra, which I think he means to remove the suffix. There was safik rabban lekula amru chacham dachra b'safik ilahakam b'toras badai. We remove the suffix. We high time a Kosos Arad, this so perk avri psachim, the shame Kosos, lefikach omru Kosos, and he came into Rabbanan who, I saw my tzvius omru b'zman is tov lispar b'yom rishon, the suffix chashecha, kedei sheyu sheva Shabbosos Tmimas Legamri. So he should begin the Sphira during Ben Hashmoshos, even though Ben Hashmoshos is Sofik Yom, Sofik Laila, and Sphira is a mitzvah Laila. Why start at Ben Hashmoshos? The answer is because we want to make sure the entire day is counted. Vale nirabi diriat tosvis shevarich ala sphira ben hashmoshos. Shari imlo yuchal levarich yafsid es bracha. So we're not telling him to count the omer ben hashmoshos without a bracha. So fast forwarding a little bit, nira the sphira le tosvis shevarich ben hashmoshos v'chenu lehedje barash. Pirish Ri, near the Suffolk Hashech Yochel Varech, the Ein Tzorch Lahamtin Ad Shevadei Laila, came on Davi Sveka Derabbanan. So it's interesting. We're going to apply Suffolk Derabbanan Lakula and allow for a bracha. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to assume it's Lila, even though we don't know it's Lila, and we're going to allow you to make a bracha because the entire mitzvah of Sfiyas Homer is Derabbanan. So I think this leads to the conclusion that he calls Aleph, his first definition of Safek Rabbanan L'Kula, Hachra. Hachra means this is how we're going to say B'Toras Vadai that this is the halach. And that means that we can be making a bit of shmoshos B'Toras Vadai. Hence, we make a bracha. V'hinei tzarech iyud eich yochel levarech ben hashmoshos as safek im mekayim mitzvah Sfiyas Omer v'im kain safek im chayim b'bracha. The Kaimelon, the suffix brachas lahakim. A minute to fix this. Okay. Benira Mavur B'Shitas HaTosus VeHarush, you know, he is the rush. The din Safek Rabbanan L'Kula Eino Lomar Dishari Mi Safek Linog B'Kula. It's not just the din in Nihu. I treat it as if I could make believe it's L'Kula. Ela B'Safek Rabbanan Amu Chacham Lachrias Safek Tzad HaKula. It's Hachras HaSafek. It's not just the din in Nihu. I heard this from Again, not as it applies to this bracha ben hashmash, but I heard this chakira from my Rebbe Rav Soloveitchik. And I think Rav Shechta has it written up here in one of these farms that I have here. L'chein misha rotza lispar ben hashmashos, mishum shechoshe shema im lo yispar ata yishkach lispar b'layla. L'chein noach lo lispar ata nomar olav shedin din safik l'kula machriyim klapa v'sasafik devade kvar layla v'chayev b'mitzvah v'shapi yochel levar. Yeah, I'm not sure why he introduces this whole thing about someone who's afraid that maybe if he doesn't count now, he'll forget about counting. I mean, he could have just given the reasoning here that he wants tmima. Whatever. The hine afsha ran sham cholik ala tosfos. So the Ran himself is of the opinion that we don't make a bracha when counting the Omer ben hashmashos. Ach nir midvarav shelo chalak aleim b'shoresh hadover she'ef shel levarach al svira ben hashmashos al shcholik ma shenot toser muter v'roy lasos. Notice the Ran would rather avoid, if possible, applying the principle of Sofik Rabbanu L'Kula, because the Ran is not moved by this Tmimus business. We don't need Tmimus, and therefore we have to count in Ben Hashmashos. And therefore, why bother with counting Ben Hashmashos? I mean, it's not necessary. But in theory, if it was necessary, that even though Ben Hashmashos is a Safek, the Ran would agree with Tosus that you make a bracha because we machriya the Safek and it becomes a vada. Ubazem uvanim divrei Ran. Oh, let's see how this will answer the Ran. B'tchilas dvar kosav she'en lahakil b'chol adalid kosos elakach b'shnayim yen. Right? You could only be makil on 2 out of the 4, and then you don't know which 2 out of the 4 to choose. Hainu. Shemidin safik d'Rabbanu L'Kula lo amrinon shemuto likones l'safek b'linog L'Kula. Yimkein yesh lahakar b'chol adalid kosos. Ub'chol shnei kosos yinog L'Kula misafek. So the Ran is saying, whoops, the Ran is saying, tighter here, that don't tell me that we can be makil on 2 cups and be noeg l'kula, because why would you choose these 2 over those 2? Right? If you're going to say in all these sets that will be noeg l'kula, you can't just arbitrarily choose which set. But, says the Ran, the din of Safik Rabbanu L'Kula is achras ha-Safik L'Kula. The afkana yiroy lachriya the liftar me'aseba b'shtei kosos. Ela she'ein lonu kan hakroas hakro lahakil the ein kula yoser im yishte shtekos rishonos below aseba. Me'achar shem yishte shtekos hakroas below aseba. Nimtza she'ein kan Hakro hagoremes es hakula b'Rabbanan misafek chayv lasi b'kol dalid kosos. What's he saying here? So even if you want to apply a hachras hasafik based on a kula, so you want to be machriel the safik kula, like we did with Ben Hashmashos and Shrius HaOmer. So he says, where are you going to set up the hachra? You're going to set up the hachra vis-a-vis these two coasters, or not the other two coasters, and vice versa. Nimtza she'en kan es hachra hagoremes es hakula b'drabbanan. Right, you want to set up a hachra in order to apply the principle of safek drabanan l'kula and be makil. Well, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to be making? So I guess what he's saying is that the suffix is basically chal on all four kosos as an entity, and therefore, how could you be machriya l'kula on any one of these two kosos at the expense of the other two kosos? We mashet kosav haran up to osvav the hemshek dvarav the not nekil b'travayu hami kara hami akra mitzvah sasebel gamre. Right, this was the end of the Ran. Near the Srile the Vidin Safik Ravan Lukula Yeshna Lochano Sefes Shemitocha Safe Afim Eno Mukhra Shari Li Adam Linod Lukula. Which literally translates in the following way, that even if it's impossible in a certain suffix to be machriya l'kula, but nevertheless you can be noeg l'kula. L'fizel yamakom lomer she yiftar yipater me'aseva b'chol adal kosos sheb'chol kos sheshosa harei suffix im chayiv ba beheseiba v'yinog l'kula v'lo yesek. So when we deal on the level of hachra, we have to be machriya the suffix on the entire entity of Dalit Kosos, and that we can't do. But on a level of nihud, of hanhaga, when I get to the first kos, I have a right to apply the principle of suffix rabal l'kula vis-a-vis that one single kos, without having to analyze the entire entity of Dalit Kosos as an indivisible entity. So I'm up to the first two kosos, and with regard to these two kosos, I'll be noeg l'kula based on safek rabban l'kula, and I won't require a Heseiba. So the Ran answers that no, there's a klal in dini safek rabban l'kula, the chol she'im ninag l'kula, if through our nihug l'kula we will completely undermine the takana lo dainin and safek rabban l'kula. So again, in the first round, the Ran is saying that okay, I can't apply a hachra in safek rabban l'kula and set up Heseiba for one of the two sets. That hachra I can't do because the hachra has to be on the entire entity of Dalit Kosos. But there's another halacha of nihud that I apply in my own situation, safek rabban l'kula, which I can apply to each kos individually. And at that point, the Ran introduces another concept, and he says that there's no suffix Rabbanan L'Kula if te'oker takara legamri. So even though as niug of suffix Rabbanan L'Kula, you could apply that niug on each kos individually and end up without any Heseiba whatsoever, but then te'oker takara legamri, and in such a case, says we don't apply suffix Rabbanan L'Kula. It's beyond the limits, the outer boundaries of suffix Rabbanan L'Kula. But dvar meduyakim b'lashon haran shetchilas dvar of Mayri b'din suffix Rabbanan L'Kula b'toras hakara shekasav the nasal L'Kula. Kasav lashon nasal b'mashma shekein yesh lo leches achar hakula. He's using the word nasal. We go as if to say we were machriya, we came to a definite conclusion. V'sosh Kasav inekel b'travayu, etc. Miyakra mitzvah sebudam. Hishmit tevas nasal. He didn't say if we'll go to be making. Mishum shebesof dvar mayri shelo b'toras achra ela ban haga mitoch hasafek enka nasal akula. So nasal akula indicates a vadai, which we call achra. And the opposite, if we omit the word nasal, it means let's be noeg l'kula, but we're not really coming up with those badai. We're still in the dark, and it's only a suffix. Again, in the next paragraph here on page Kuf Chav Daled, he reiterates the fact that the four Kosos are one entity, and therefore we cannot be machriya the suffix, because we know for a fact that two of the four require a Heseiba. And now he embarks on a research project. He wants to know from whence did the Ran derive the conclusion that there are really two halachas in the din of suffix Rabbanan L'Kula. One is to be machriya the suffix, and number two, if you can't be machriya the suffix, then you simply are noeg L'Kula midin suffix Rabbanan L'Kula. Tnan, on the left side, the Beitza, Yudalin Omen Aleph, Beis Hillel Omrim, Havlin B'Yontiv Midochim Kedarkon B'Madoch Shel Evan Umelech B'Madoch Shel Eitz. So we're talking about grinding spices on Yontiv. Which would certainly be also on Shabbos, midin tchina, tochen is one of the 39 malachas, but on Yontif, it's considered ochel nefesh. We're preparing for the meal, and that's mutter. And pligi Rav Huna Rav Chizda, b'tam shechmiru b'melach, yosef yasher b'tavim. So if he's grinding salt, crushing salt, maybe the word would be pulverizing salt, then he has to use a very unusual kind of a grinder. It's got to be made of wood as opposed to stone. So why is it that they were more machmir in melach than in tavlin? In tavlin, meaning spices, you're allowed to grind them on yontiv with a stone vessel. Grind it. Whereas with regard to melach, we were more machmir, and we required a madoch shel eight, so wooden chopper. Chadom, according to one opinion, mishum shekol akideros trichos melach, v'yoda me'er yontiv sheyitztarech melach, Salt is something that we know we'll need at the table, and he should have prepared the salt by grinding it down on Erev Yom. Chad Omar, according to another opinion, Mishum Shemelach Eino Mafig Tamam. The Tavlin Mafigin Tamam im Yiducham Erev Yom. So the second opinion has it that in the case of Tavlin, there's an urgency, not an urgency, but a necessity to delay the grinding. If you do the grinding on Erev Yontif, it'll be Mefig Tamo. How would you translate that into English? It'll lose its sharpness. What? It's kind of like Charain. I don't know if you gentlemen make Charain for Pesach. So if you leave it open on Erev Pesach, which some people do, it loses that sharpness because otherwise it's very difficult to eat that morah, that Charain. But with regard to Melach, why delay this process? Whenever you do the Hadoch of the Melach, it's going to remain, healthy Melach, forever and ever. So the Gemara says that there's an nafkamina between these two explanations. And what is that nafkamina? That's going to be im yiducham bi erev yontif. Kishyodem erev yontif ma yivasha. If he knows already an erev yontif, what he's going to cook on yontif. The oz litam shekol keder strichus melach yeasa loduf gam tavun. Since he knows already on Erev Yontif that he's going to need salt for his pot that he's cooking on Yontif, so he should have already prepared the salt and ground it down on Erev Yontif. However, l'tam de tavlina mafigim tamam, yoser loduch b'yontif. What is that? Yutar. Yutar loduch b'yontif. In other words, if he knew that he's going to need these spices for his pot on Yontif that he's going to cook on Yontif, why did he do it Erev Yontif? So the answer is because if he does it on Erev Yontif, it's going to lose its sharpness. Yofig Tam. But if we go with the reasoning that that the reason why we're not going to be so makil, the reason why we're going to be more lenient with regard to tablet is because he didn't even know beforehand. Salt, he knew beforehand, everything needs salt. But he didn't know that he would create such a tavshil, or his wife would cook such a pot that would require tavlinin. But here's a case where Yadam Erev Yontif should start tav. He knew exactly what recipe his wife is going to use on Yontif, and therefore he should have prepared it on Erev Yontif. According to the other reasoning, he couldn't prepare it on Erev Yontif because of Mefik Tamo, it's going to lose its taste. So we'll just finish to the end of this paragraph. Uletam de tavlin mefigin tamam yoser loduch yeah. O nafgemino loduch morika is karkum. I think it's written in English almost the same way. Karkum. She'ein mefig tamo. Okay, this is the kind of spice that always remains very strong. Uletam de shari tavlin mishum mefig tam yoser. If the reason why we allowed Hadochas HaTavlinim on Yontif is because of Mefik Tamo here in this case, it's going to be awesome. Because he could have just as easily done the Hadoch on Erev Yontif and at no loss. Well, the time to call it Kederes Strichas Melech. But if you're saying because he didn't anticipate he would need this Tavlin, he didn't know that his wife was going to cook Morika on Yontif, is therefore he would be allowed to do the hadacha on Yom. All right, so Belinator will pick this up tomorrow. All right, so we'll start Sanhedrin in just a few minutes, and I wish you a great day. Thank you so much.